This week, Conflict Zone is at the annual security conference in Munich amid plenty of recriminations and bad blood between Europe and Washington. My guest here is Jim Risch, chairman of the powerful Senate Foreign Relations Committee. How damaging is this transatlantic divide, and how committed is the Trump administration to NATO? Jim Risch, welcome to Conflict Zone.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
All the latest polls show that French, Germans, the British now regard the US as a greater danger to their interests than China, which you regard as your prime danger. How much blame do you think Washington should take for that?
Well, look, sometimes events drive us in a direction that we shouldn't be driven. We don't feel the same way about our European friends. We're more like our...
You don't? There are a lot of recriminations these days, particularly over Iran.
In what regard?
To the Iran deal that Europe continues to abide by,
Sure.
And the one that you walked out of.
Yeah, well, we didn't walk out of it. The President of the United States at that time, Barack Obama, entered into that agreement over the objection of a lot of us. It did not have the things in it that it needed to have in it. It was very weak. It did indeed address one issue, but I viewed the Iran deal as a deal that tried to discipline a bad boy in the classroom that was doing 5 bad things. They addressed one of them. But
they addressed a big one, didn't they?
They addressed one of them.
A big one.
They addressed one of them. But when you have to deal with American families whose kids have been killed by devices that were made in Iran, we consider that a big deal. And I guarantee you, the families who have to deal with that loss consider that a very big deal. And Iran thumbed their nose at us, at you, at the world, and said,
Europe
we're going to continue
see it that
to do
way,
that.
Senator. Europe doesn't see it that way. The fact is that as a signatory to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, Iran has pledged not to develop nuclear weapons ever, full stop. What's wrong with that?
Well, there's nothing wrong with that if they would clean up their act on everything else and would have agreed to do it.
But the deal wasn't about everything else. It was about this. You can argue it, and they do, that it wasn't a perfect deal and that it could have included other aspects in it, but the deal itself pledges, and they recommitted to this in the deal. They signed the JCPOA, never, ever to produce nuclear weapons.
Can you explain to me why they won't stop their terrorist activities and why they won't abide by the UN resolutions? Those are things that those of us who disagreed with the agreement wanted in the agreement. And if they weren't willing to do that, then we should have kept the pressure up on them. I appreciate we have a disagreement there, but nonetheless, we feel very, very strongly that Iran was, we had the opportunity to rein Iran up in all the things that they were doing, but that was indeed a missed opportunity, we believe. I hope you can do it. I wish you all the best in the world that you can do it.
Do you respect the views of Israeli intelligence and military on this aspect?
I'm on the Intelligence Committee, and I have to respectfully decline to comment on intelligence information.
Well, I'm not talking about, but their views on the Iran deal. Carmi Gillen, for instance, former head of the Domestic Intelligence Service, the Shin Bet, he said 2 years after the deal came into force, while the majority of my colleagues in the Israeli military and intelligence communities supported the deal once it was reached, many of those who had major reservations now acknowledge it has a positive impact on Israel's security and must be fully maintained.
Well, that's up to them. We're a sovereign nation, and we have
strong allies with them.
We're very strong allies with them. We consider them
one of our best friends. And they're closer to the danger than you are, if there is a danger, aren't they?
I hope you're not suggesting that we have to agree on everything, because we will not agree on everything. And I can tell you again, we feel very strongly on the Iran issue and the fact that Iran has got to behave itself. And if it doesn't, it's going to continue to be under the pressure that the United States is going to bring from the sanctions that we are going to maintain in place. And I hope
But this is going to cause a greater rift with Europe, isn't it?
I don't think so.
But one by one,
your tone here is much different than what I get from the, and I meet every day with ambassadors from Europe, and they acknowledge that we have a disagreement in this regard, but they are not nearly as hostile as the questions that you're asking here today.
Really? I mean,
Yes.
Federica Mogherini,
Yes.
for instance, the EU foreign policy chief, said last year, "We cannot accept as Europeans that others, even our closest allies and friends, determine and decide with whom we can do business with or trade." She was talking about your sanctions.
Well, of course,
She's telling you to back
of
off,
course we
basically.
can. Yeah, of
isn't
course. She can tell us to back off, but we're not going to.
Mogherini also said it seems that screaming, shouting, insulting and bullying, systematically destroying and dismantling everything that's already in place is the mood of our times. This impulse to destroy is not leading us anywhere good. It's not solving any of our problems.
I'm with you. I don't think yelling and screaming gets us anywhere. But on the other hand, I think we have to have reasonable dialogue. We consider ourselves strong allies of the Europeans. We want to remain that way, but we have disagreements, such as the refusal to, your side's refusal to abide by the agreements you made to, as far as NATO is concerned. That's a disagreement that we have, but is that going to dissolve NATO? Of course not. We view NATO as the strongest military alliance that has ever been entered into in the world. We want to maintain that alliance. But again, you talked about us not keeping our agreement on Iran. There are members of the NATO organization that aren't keeping their agreements.
Well, let's
talk
talk a bit about that then. Let's talk about that. Because at the NATO summit in Brussels last summer, Mr. Trump claimed that before 2017, the amount of money that other NATO countries were spending on defense was going down and down very substantially. That was what he said. That's his quote. Simply wasn't true, was it?
I wasn't there, so I don't know.
The statement wasn't true because in 2015, 2016, NATO, Europe and Canada increased their defense spending by up to 1.83% 2015, 3.14% in 2016.
Will you agree with me, though, that they weren't keeping the commitments, that only 17 of the members were keeping the commitments? Would you agree with me on that?
The commitment was to get it up to 2% by 2024. That was the commitment. We're not at 2024 yet. And it wasn't a hard, it was commitment to try and get there.
Well, I don't think you made a commitment
was to try to get there. And Mr. Trump also made another erroneous statement at the summit. He said everyone has agreed to substantially up their commitment. They're going to up it to levels they've never thought of before. It wasn't true. It fell to President Macron to say, there's a communique. It confirms the goal of 2% by 2024. That's all. That's all it is.
You know, I came here to do an interview with you.
Yeah.
And I want to do an interview with you, but I don't want to debate. I don't do these in Washington, D.C., and I'm not going to do it here. But if you want to interview me, I'll be happy to do it, but I'm not going to debate with you.
Well, I'm asking your reaction to that, because you said that
my reaction is
Europe hadn't lived up to its commitments.
It has not. And are you trying to tell me that Europe has lived up to its commitments under NATO? Is that what you're trying to tell me? Because believe me, there is no belief of that on anybody's part, that some of the European nations are not living up to their commitments. And indeed, look, I've done this for 10 years. I've come over here and tried to talk the NATO countries into living up to their agreements. They patted us on the head and said, oh, well, we're on track to try to do this or try to do that. I really give President Trump a lot of credit, because indeed, since he's been in office and since he has underscored this, there are countries that are making much better efforts to live up to their agreements. And we're allies here. You and I are arguing like we're on opposite sides. NATO is an alliance that we all belong to. That's a great alliance, and that we want to continue. It's in your best interest. It's in our best interest. An argument can be made it's even more in your interest because you're closer to the issue than we are. And the INF is another issue we think that you have a great stake in.
Chancellor Angela Merkel said last year that there were good reasons to continue fighting for the transatlantic relationship, but she added, we can't count on it anymore.
Well, I'm sorry she feels like that. We don't feel like that.
You say that, but a bipartisan group of lawmakers has introduced a bill to prevent Mr. Trump from withdrawing from NATO without Congress's approval, haven't they?
I don't believe the president's going to withdraw from NATO. I have no reason to believe that he's going to withdraw from NATO.
But this bill is a preemptive strike, isn't it, to prevent him from doing so? Obviously, some people...
Very political.
Very political?
Very political.
Obviously,
very
people
political.
in Congress believe, some people do believe seriously.
Yeah.
Don't they have a reason for that?
There's 535 members of Congress, and there's a belief for about everything in that 535 members, believe me. But I'm chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, and I'm here to tell you we are committed to NATO. We're going to continue to be committed to NATO. There is no feeling in the United States of America that we want to withdraw from NATO. Just the opposite, really.
And you can give that commitment sitting here?
I can.
That Mr. Trump, the White House...
I'm not going to commit on behalf of Mr. Trump. You'll need to talk to him.
That's what matters
I
at the
can
end
give
of
you
the
a
day.
commitment. I can give you... Now, say that sentence again.
That's what matters at the end of the day.
No, it does
Mr.
not.
Trump.
No, well, it does not. I always have difficulty when I'm talking about the structure of our government with my European friends. We are the first branch of government. When the United States was founded, the founding fathers wisely put together 3 branches of government, co-equal branches of government, except that the first branch of government holds the purse strings and passes the laws. The second branch of government, Mr. Trump, can't pass any laws. By the way, I'm a friend of his. He and I get along relatively well. We have disagreements, just like...
And he's never talked to you about dumping NATO?
He has never said to me that he would dump NATO.
Let's talk about the U.S. attitude to human rights, because that, as much as anything else, appears to have changed with this administration. The Munich security report that accompanies this conference that you're here to attend, it accuses the administration of displaying an irritating enthusiasm for strong men across the globe. Would you say that was fair?
No.
And living in a post-human rights world? No?
No. Look, we're just like our friends, the Europeans, the Germans, all our friends in Europe. We feel strongly about human rights. It's in our soul and it's in our heart. It's in your soul and in your heart. Now, do we always agree exactly? Of course not. But human rights is always going to be at the top of the list of those of us who are part of Western civilization. It's just the way it is.
You say that, but Rex Tillerson, Trump's first Secretary of State, spelt out a different message. He said, too often, promoting our values is an obstacle to advancing our other interests. Wasn't that kissing human rights goodbye?
We're not doing very well here. Why don't you ask me about how I feel on these issues instead of throwing at me quotes from other people? I don't want to do this. I really don't want to debate, and I don't want to be here reacting to what other folks said. Ask me about human rights. Ask me about NATO. But ask me about it and how the United States Foreign Relations Committee of the United States Senate feels about it. And you and I are going to get along really well.
But can't you see why these comments resonate here in Europe and produce doubts about which direction the U.S. is going?
And I'm really sorry that we didn't have a good, clear understanding when we started this. I always do when I do this in D.C. I really want to do a good interview with you. I want to tell you where I stand, where the United States Senate stands, where our committee stands, but you're asking me to defend all kinds of statements by other people. And look, I'm just not there. You need somebody else to debate on this issue. I'm not going to debate with you on the issue, but I really want to give you an interview on all the issues you got on your paper about where I am, where the United States Senate is, and where my committee is.
Let's talk then about the attitude to Saudi Arabia after the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, and the clear reluctance of the Trump administration to hold the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman responsible.
Look, you're drifting again. Let's talk about where I am. Let's talk about where I am on this.
Are you satisfied with that? Are you satisfied with that?
Let me tell you what the view of the United States Senate and what our committee is on this. The murder was a despicable event. It was something that people living in the 21st century can't tolerate. It's not the way human beings should treat each other. And as a result of that, the United States has sanctioned 17 people that have been identified with that. It's an ongoing
But it hasn't held the Crown Prince responsible.
Yeah, it's an ongoing investigation right now. We on the United States Senate Committee on Foreign Relations have just entered into negotiations, further negotiations with the intelligence agencies to get more information on that. Look, there's nobody. I hope you're not thinking that there's somebody that is soft on this, that thinks that this is all right. This is not all right. Saudi Arabia is a strong ally of ours.
You say that, but we heard the president say maybe he did it, maybe he didn't.
Yeah. Look, I'm not going to defend the president here. If you wanted to interview him, I can line you up probably with some people who can, in D.C., who you can do an interview on, and you can cross-examine them all day long on statements that the president has made, tweeting and otherwise, and you'll have a long, long interview and that'll be great. Ask me what we're doing and how we look at this.
Do you share Lindsey Graham's view that the Crown Prince was responsible?
Lindsey's a really, really good friend of mine. He and I have had some confidential conversations on that. They're between he and I. He is a United States senator.
And you won't tell me whether you agree with him or not.
On what?
On the fact that he says there is zero chance that the killing had occurred without the prince's knowledge.
Well, look, did you then ask him the evidence he had there? And
he went to a CIA briefing. He went to a CIA briefing.
Well, I'm on the Intelligence Committee. Lindsey isn't. I have looked at every scrap of evidence there is on that. And unfortunately, because of my position on the Intelligence Committee, I can't sit here and reiterate that for you. And in that regard, I can't comment on that. But I can comment on the 17 people that we have found to be responsible and that we have sanctioned.
Let's talk about North Korea, since Mr. Trump is soon to hold another summit with Kim Jong-un. Mm-hmm. You've suggested that he hasn't received, that the president hasn't received enough credit for his efforts there.
Absolutely.
He said the president single-handedly backed us away from a cliff. He gets no credit for that, and he should. You could argue that he single-handedly took you to the cliff edge, didn't you?
No.
No?
No.
Fire and fury like the world has ever seen?
I think that Kim Jong-un is the one that took us there. A year ago, right here, as you may or may not know or remember, I gave a pretty tough speech on that particular subject. And I really believed, and I believe today, that we were headed for a very, very bad place. In America, people were urging, some people were urging the President of the United States not to meet with Kim Jong-un. They said they shouldn't give him the prestige of a meeting. And I was on the opposite side of that. I said, put President Trump across the table from Kim Jong-un. Let them look each other in the eye.
And fall in love, as they did. And fall in love.
Yeah, and let them discuss this and see if they can't get us to a different place than where we are. And they did that. And they're to be commended for talking, and they're certainly commended to lowering the rhetoric that was being thrown by both sides at each other. I think the president should get great.
Senator, there seems to be a different place between Mr. Trump's understanding that there's no longer a nuclear threat from North Korea and the CIA's understanding as they brought it out.
You probably ought to interview both of them on that. Move on.
They said, Gina Haspel said they're committed to developing a long-range nuclear armed missile will pose a direct threat to the U.S. She said that January 30th. Do you agree with that?
Gina testifies before our committee regularly. We hear various points of view on all of these matters. We have 17 different intelligence agencies. Each of them takes each of these and rates their belief as to whether it is a strongly held belief, a weakly held belief, or something in between. Where I come down,
still a threat? North Korea is still a threat?
Well, of course it's still. Everyone's a threat. Of course it's still a threat. But look, it is not what it was a year ago. A year ago, we were in a very, very bad place. I don't feel that way anymore. I really don't. I think the president is going to continue to talk to them. I think he's going to continue to move them back away from where they were. I think he's given Kim Jong-un the ability to take an exit ramp that will put us all in a lot better place than where we were. And I wish people would quit doing this to the president and instead pray that he continues to be successful in this regard. Because this is a matter...
We can only deal with the different voices that are coming out of Washington. That's all. That's all we can deal with here in Europe. You may talk to the president.
I'm here to bring my voice for you.
All right, on Venezuela. Mr. Trump refuses to take the option of deploying U.S. forces off there.
Now say that again.
He refuses to remove the option of deploying
Let
U.S.
me tell you
forces
where we
there.
in the United States Senate are in Venezuela.
What's the aim here?
Well, I think the aim here is to have the transition that is taking place continue to take place peacefully. We met with Juan Guaido's representative, the new ambassador to the United States, and Juan Guaido is the president of Venezuela at the present time. We believe strongly that
according to you,
we believe strongly that the Venezuelan people should be commended for the way that they've handled this. They used the rule of law to remove Mr. Maduro.
He's still there. He's still there, Senator.
Would you mind letting me finish my sentences, please?
Sure.
They used the rule of law to remove Mr. Maduro from the presidency and to install Juan Guaido as the president. As a result of that, we in the United States have recognized the Juan Guaido administration as the lawful administration. We've opened up the funds that are deposited in the United States and put them at the disposal of the Guaido administration.
But Nicolas Maduro is still in power, Senator. He's still in the presidential power. He still has the armed forces.
And he even claims to be president of Venezuela. And he is not president of Venezuela. And we believe that as time goes on, his power there is going to continue to fade, what little power that he does have left. And again, the thing we want most is to see this thing resolved. We met with the president of Colombia, had a lengthy conversation with them. I can tell you that there's no daylight between the United States and Colombia as to where this is going and how it's going. We've met with a number of other countries, obviously. Look, the people that are supporting Maduro are the rogues gallery in the world, including the Iranians, the Russians, the North Koreans. Put a little frosting on the cake.
You don't think this is you don't think this is a stalemated situation?
Oh, it's not now. Okay. I guarantee it's not a stalemated
let's
situation.
Talk, Senator, in the time we have left.
You should know that we have prepositioned a tremendous amount of aid, humanitarian aid, on the border. And that's going to start moving in very quickly. Okay. And
in the short time we have left, can we just look at the wall, the concern about the wall that Trump wants to build on the U.S. southern border, and the news that he'll declare a national emergency to get all the funding that Congress denied him. Yeah. Is this an abuse of power, in your view?
Look, we have issues on our southern border. It's about 2,000 miles long. There is about 654 miles of wall existing. It was built by the last 4 presidents, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats. It was funded by the United States Congress in a bipartisan fashion, both Republicans and Democrats. We have serious issues to our south right now, particularly from Central America.
Do you have a national emergency?
Oh, and clearly.
Really?
Clearly we have it. Clearly.
Because a lot of people in your party don't think so.
Well,
and a lot of people are accusing him. It's created a
let me ask you this:
in your party.
In Germany, are you guys, everybody, all believe the exact same thing?
I don't speak for Germany.
I can tell you.
I don't speak for Germany. I don't speak for any country.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, in America there is diverse thought on any issue that you want to put on the table, and that's why America is as strong as it is because we do have that diverse
This is going to end up in the courts, isn't it? A lot of wrangling for years to come. The national emergency.
It's been in the courts for many, many, many years, and I agree with you. I think everything in America winds up in the courts at some point in time.
The national emergency is that Mr. Trump's poll ratings are falling, isn't it? That's in truth the only national emergency.
Well, I don't think that's the case. His polling has been up and down just like everybody else. But look, we resolve this through elections, and I know my European friends, they do get apoplectic over Donald Trump, but
so do people in your Congress. So do people in your Congress.
Some do. The Democrats more so than the Republicans. But look, we're going to get through this. We're Americans. We've had ups and downs with Europe, but we will continue to have ups and downs with Europe. We have ups and downs between our states within the United States, between our political parties and everything else. But we'll resolve them. We'll get through them, and we'll all be stronger and better for it.
Good to have you on the program. Thanks very much, Jim Risch. Thank you.